powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Today is the day the Eagles have reported to training camp. Well, they haven't really done anything today, but they are all in the building, ready to go. Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast is here. Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Eagles report today for training camp. Their first practice, Adam Caplan, will be tomorrow morning. They will be back on the field, and we will get the 2023 Eagles season kicked off tomorrow morning. How are you, friend?
I am well, Mike. I am well. I'm glad to see you. So, yeah, look, all that gets done today is they have the big state of the team meeting with Nick Sirianni. Then they may or may not have individual position group meetings, and then they're done. And everyone arrives. It's kind of funny because, the reporters, there's nothing else going on, so they take video of the guys getting out of their cars and all that. But it's really the official kickoff of the summer for me. And then tomorrow's the first practice at 10 a.m. By the way, every practice is at 10 a.m. But as Jeff Moshe and I talked about on our show, Inside the Birds, that dropped Monday, when we reviewed sort of the changes in the schedule, they've done, I don't want to say drastic, but they've changed something pretty significant. They're the only NFL team in the first 8 days does not have back-to-back practices. It's a practice, walkthrough, practice, walkthrough, or practice, or nothing the next day. But, hey, that's the way it is, and quite frankly, it works for them. It doesn't guarantee that no one will get hurt. It just happens to work for them.
Yeah, and just for the people out there, they report today, and the first practice is tomorrow. What are these first practices this early week here? Is this like, it was back in the day? You're doing 2-a-days and ramping it up, or is this more just walkthrough stuff?
It actually started, Mike, the change in practices. So when my first training camp was in 1999, my first tour was in 2005. But when I first started going to camps, all teams had 2 days. Morning, typically, but not always, typically it's in pads, or it's 2 to 3 hours of pretty physical performance in that practice. The afternoon practice, Mike, was special teams. Then I'm going to fast forward to the 2011 CBA and we, as we know, about the lockout. Coming out of it, the players wanted fewer practices. They wanted later practices. They also didn't want the coaches to coach them in the offseason very much. The coaches could not even talk to them about football until after the draft. That's how crazy it is. But guess what? The ownership loved it. Hey, don't need to pay anymore. You don't want to practice as much? No problem. Coaches balked. They screamed. They yelled. But they did a good job of adjusting. Coaching is all about adjustments. And then what came out of that was a 4 to 5 day acclimation period, Mike. Over time, it really worked. To be honest with you, what happened after that was it's a 4-day acclimation period. The 5th day, you can be in pads. Now, it doesn't mean the Eagles will be in pads. They may or may not be in pads. That's up. You only get so many padded practices. But that's the big difference is the acclimation period. Now, what happens is there are limits to what you can do in that 4-day acclimation period. But I'll tell you what, talking to some people with the Ravens, they cannot wait to get out of that acclimation period because they have the longest practices. Some will be 2.5 hours. Some may even spill over to 3. And that's what John Harbaugh wants. And by the way, Eagles practice when Harbs was here, they were like that under Andy Reid, but they are no longer other than the Ravens.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see what ends up happening as they get there tomorrow. First practice tomorrow morning in terms of the position battles. We'll start to look at those and examine because they start tomorrow. Let's explain for the people. Dennis Kelly's here, and interesting signing. This is a guy who has had some tackle experience both sides, also played right guard for Chip Kelly way back in the day. Just a veteran kind of guy. What's his signing say?
Yeah, he could. It's not out of the question. He gets some snaps at guard, but he's here to back up at right or left tackle. We're told pretty strongly that he's better off at right than left. He's a mauling type guard. For some reason, the Eagles didn't think he fit in back when Chip Kelly was here. In fact, I happened to be at Titans camp the day that he was traded from the Eagles to the Titans, and Dorial Green-Beckham came to the Eagles, Mike. And obviously Green-Beckham struggled processing and learning, and Doug Peterson said they're going to bring him along slowly. It never worked. By the way, he never wound up being with another team. He was out of the league very quickly within a year. And Dennis Kelly got a couple of extensions. I mean, he was a sort of a middle-of-the-road tackle, but it was a great story. No one thought much of him. I got to give this guy credit. Yeah, early in his career he played guard, but he's been mostly mostly right or left tackle. Now, here's the question, which we delved into on our show on Monday. Well, what does this mean for Jack Driscoll? Because Jack Driscoll, if he doesn't win the right guard job, would be the top backup offensive lineman. Now, he's really not a left tackle. He's more of a right tackle or guard. So that's where Dennis Kelly comes in, because Kelly's more of a tackle than a guard. So I don't think it really has any impact on it. Driscoll, by the way, is on the final year of his rookie deal. The Eagles do like him. He's been a good story of development as a fourth-round pick. And we'll just see where Dennis Kelly is. He's had some injury challenges over the years. He's 33 and a half years old, clearly in the twilight of his career. He's been banged up, and we'll see how he does. But it's a smart signing. He from what I understand, I believe he's passed his physical. So that he'll be there tomorrow. We'll see how he practices. And by the way, tomorrow's practice will be late. It's not like Andy Reid's first day. That's why I never missed the first day of practice on Andy Reid. They got after it in the first practice.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He was here.
You used to get out there and see those guys out there thumping at it early.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Adam. Does having Kelly here turn him into what Driscoll generally is, that swing tackle? Does that put Driscoll any more in play to be the right guard?
No, it's just, I mean, you could say a small percentage. Well, if he shockingly wins it, yeah, then they don't have a backup swing tackle. What we had said on our show last week before Kelly signed, their number one priority for depth was to sign a swing tackle, because Driscoll is limited in what he can do. He's more, again, because he's not a grinder. Like, he's not like Dennis Kelly, who is a good run blocker. He blocked for Derrick Henry for many years. He became a very serviceable tackle. Not a great tackle, but, decent veteran journeyman type. And that's really what they needed. Now, that was not the name I was thinking, to be honest with you. So think about it. 7 years later, Mike, I joke with someone, you'll love this one. I joke with someone with the Eagles who I ran into last week. I said, hey, well, I guess when the news broke, I don't know when, over the weekend, I said to this guy, I said, hey, is this a ceremonial 1-year contract because you're going to retire as an Eagle? And the guy laughed. Because I'm like, that is 7 years ago. What are you guys doing?
Yeah,
but, okay.
Traded for Dorial Green Beckham, by the way.
DGB.
Yes,
yeah,
there you
DGB.
Go. You have any concerns with the light practice schedule and kind of break it down what we're going to see here? Do you have concerns with the way it goes?
Yeah. No, because Joe Banner, the former Eagles president, we, for our Patreon members, we did this amazing interview with him, which is probably going to drop later this week. And we got into that with Joe. And Joe made a great point. Look, anyone can get hurt at any time. It has nothing to do with sports science in terms of if someone tears an ACL at practice, it's because maybe his foot got caught in the grass, because they do have grass at NovaCare, whatever the case may be. But it gives you a better percentage choice of, if you don't practice as hard, if your nutrition is better, your sleep habits are better. I thought this was a great point by Joe. So I remember talking to Chip Kelly about this in 2013 when he came in, and Chip explained why sports science is good. Because this is new. We never heard of that term before Chip came in. But what Joe said was, look, it works for them. They have the data behind it. And as you know, I believe, without looking, I'm pretty certain, Mike, that the Eagles had all 22 of their starters in the Super Bowl game against the Chiefs. Yeah, they didn't win it, but they were pretty healthy. Health matters. That matters to and look, the Eagles were not that healthy in year one under Sirianni, but they sure as heck were. And their the Eagles, by the way, they practice lighter than any NFL team in the regular season and in OTAs, and especially in training camp. Because remember, Mike, no back-to-back real practices. They speed walkthroughs, which a lot of teams do. And then the other thing is, as we mentioned before on your show, they've got the joint practices, the Browns for 2 days and the Colts for 1. And they're before their preseason games those respective weeks.
Yeah. Also, you take a look at what they have the first 4 days, no pads until later on this week, so you're not going to see any hitting, stuff like that. Yeah. That all leads up to 2 sets of joint practices, and they have become bigger and bigger parts of putting these teams together over the last couple of years.
Yeah, we just talked to Rick Spielman, the former Vikings GM, about that. In fact, he liked them a lot because you get such good information. Plus, and this is what coaches tell me, they love getting their players work against another team that they don't know, and their techniques are different, and you just get really good intel, and you get good practices. They're spirited, by the way. No, you got to be careful. You can't have dirty practice. You can't have guys taking cheap shots or stuff. But remember, J.J. probably would not have been an Eagle, Mike, in 2017 had they not practiced. The Dolphins had not practiced in Novacare. So it's pretty important.
All right, Adam Caplan, Football at 4, Inside the Birds podcast. By the way, check out the latest Inside the Birds podcast on all your podcasting platforms, and I'm sure the guys are starting to ramp it up for the season. They'll be giving you great preseason and training camp material. Lots of changes on the coaching staff, the 2 new coordinators, but there's 6 assistant head coaches added to this team. So there's a lot of new faces walking around Novacare.
Yeah, 6 6 assistant coaches, not 6 assistant head coaches. But yes, I get your point. So we have not talked about this enough, Mike, on Inside the Birds. We talked about it several months ago when they had by the way, the Eagles were the last team to announce their coaching staff because they brought in Sean Desai late, and they also brought in Matt Patricia late, as we first reported at the Combine. This is the guy they were looking at. And then it fell dormant, Mike, if you remember. A couple of months, we didn't hear anything. We're like, oh, maybe it's not going to happen. Then it happened. So, yeah, so you know about the promotions. Brian Johnson was promoted from quarterback's coach to OC, replacing Shane Steichen, who's now the Colts head coach. Sean Desai comes in from Seattle, where we were told he handled a couple roles on defense. He was like a senior defensive assistant, but he was given a lot of responsibility. And I think, Mike, when when you look at it, Desai's a guy's been a coordinator before. Let's not forget that with the Bears. We talked to John DeFilippo, the former Eagles quarterbacks coach who worked with Sean for 2 years with the Bears. And also has known Sean for about 20 years. They were GAs together at Boston College when John's dad, Gene, was the athletic director at BC. And he knows the way that Sean coaches. He saw he did a great job. Let's not forget, what did Robert Quinn have, 18 sacks? But we'll have more on Sean Desai as we do our shows in training camp. And you look at it. Marcus Brady, who was sort of consultant late last season. Remember, after he got fired by the Colts, has a role as a senior offensive assistant. He was a consultant helping the defense when he was working with the offense. It was really interesting. They bought a new linebackers coach. Nick Wallace is now the D coordinator for the Cardinals. He left. Ronell Williams is the first time they've ever had this. A Nichols coach, as they're calling him, Mike. And by the way, it's not the Eagles are not the only team to do this. Other teams have nickelback coaches, but he's a Nichols coach. Taver Johnson, who's assistant DB's coach. Mike D'Angelo comes as a defensive quality control coach. So, Mike, a lot of coaches, Mike. And Matt Patricia, now they're calling him a senior defensive assistant. In our reporting the situation, he's helping where he's giving his opinion. From what we understand, the coaches like this. Like Patricia, he's not telling anyone what to do, but when he has meetings or he sees people, he'll add his 2 cents because that's what they want him to do. He's a former head coach and a great defense coordinator. The Eagles smoked him in the Super Bowl in 2017, Mike, as we know. But it works. And also, Alex Tanney, we should mention, Alex Tanney was promoted from assistant quarterbacks coach, offensive assistant to quarterbacks coach. Mike, this is his 3rd-year coaching. Remember, he was a journeyman quarterback, was with, as a third-string quarterback, 10 or 11 teams. And DK McDonald, who's known Nick Sirianni many years, was promoted from the assistant DB's coach to DB's coach. So lots of changes, Mike. And I'm not saying this is a negative at all. I'm just telling you to be aware of this. What doomed Andy Reid was too much change. It wasn't his fault. You can only go through your Rolodex so much. So that's one thing we're going to look at in training camp, Mike. How these coaches develop these players and how these coaches do together. Yeah,
there's no question that all these coaching changes, you might see something different. I talked about this with Mosher yesterday. I'd like to get your thoughts on it. Sean Desai was a coordinator in 2021 with the Bears, and how he used his linebackers. Roquan Smith was kind of his guy there.
Yeah.
Do we think that he's going to use like Nakobe Dean in a more elevated role from the way Gannon used his linebackers?
Yeah, the one way that I would say Nakobe Dean could be used. Now, there wasn't a great example of this with Chicago, but Nakobe Dean, and they didn't do it with Dean. I know Dean barely played on defense. He was mostly a special teamer, but Nakobe Dean was an exceptional blitzer at Georgia. from an inside linebacker standpoint, which is really important because the Eagles, he's going to be the Mike linebacker in this odd man front, which they're going to still run as we understand it. So that's the way that I'd hope they would use him, because Kobe Dean was really special in that area. That we forgot about that. We talked about it after he was drafted, but we forgot about it because he just didn't play on defense very much. So the tape that when he's out on defense is pretty good, Mike. But that's one way we'd like to see it. And Roquan Smith a little bit bigger physically. Let's not forget about that either.
Real quick, Adam Caplan. Tomorrow they're there. Are you there at all this week?
I am. Yes, I am going to. I should be there on Friday and hopefully Sunday. I will. My tour starts Friday for my friends at Pro Football Network. I should be at Eagles Friday morning, and the Giants have a rare evening practice, and I should be at the Giants. And then next week, Mike, I don't know if I'll be on with you. I may not be available then, but I will be out west next week.
Very cool.
With the Rams, Chargers, and the Cowpokes, hopefully.
Well, my question was, you're going to Eagles Friday then, it sounds like. Who is the one guy that if you said, I'm zoning in on this guy today, is there one guy that you are most anticipate watching more than anybody else?
It's a great question, Mike. I hadn't even thought about that. Well, see, it's funny. I'll be looking at I'm going to look at how – well, I'm going to say this. I'm going to look at how Sean Desai lines up, see if there are any differences in technique. Jeff and I have heard some stuff, which we're going to talk about probably Thursday or at our show on Monday, but – because there's no way he's going to run Fangio, that scheme, but nobody runs it exactly the same. So we're interested in what the difference is. But you talk about players. I am so interested to see this running back rotation, Mike. Because nobody really knows. We haven't had a committee here since 2017, and everybody's taking their guesses. Some people think it'll be Gainwell. I think it's still going to be Rashad Penny. Nobody knows.
Yeah,
they'll have to get through that. Coaches are new to Penny and obviously Swift. Both have significant injury histories. And don't forget about Trey Sermon. So he'll be in the mix. And then, you mentioned the Kobe Dean. Want to see him. And I know physical play, you never know when you're going to see it because the Eagles are late on how they practice. But Jalen Carter, Mike.
Gotta be, man. That was my pick. Jalen Carter. Yeah. I just want to see the size and speed that he has in the interior there.
Mike, and strength, because I'd said on our show after he was drafted, the word I'd heard, he's very similar to Ndamukong Suh, the way he plays, almost built the same Suh, a little bigger physically, but super strong and explosive. For what we've heard, he's doing everything right off the field. We know about his off-the-field challenge issue that he had, which is why he wasn't the first or second or third pick overall. Really, the second or third pick, he wouldn't have gone number one. But so we'll look for that, and any schematic changes, and offensively, it's going to look the same. I don't expect much. Now, Brian Johnson is obviously a new play caller. He called players in college, but not at this level. So we'll be looking at that.
Adam Caplan, of course, the tour begins this week. Real quick, I got this texted in yesterday. I did not see this in the offseason. Is there a rule that the forward handoff is, in other words, the RPO, can you not hand the ball off if you are behind the running back? Is that something that they put in this offseason?
Well, no, that could be a pistol. That could be if depending on like a pistol formation is what they ran at Nevada. That Kaepernick ran with the 49ers with Greg Roman as the OC, and they ran it with Roman with Lamar Jackson, where the running back lines up directly behind the quarterback. Are you talking about pistol?
I got to check this out. I got a text message yesterday that asked if we thought that the RPO was going to be let's see, where did that text message go? Because I meant to bring it up and send it to you. Oh, here it is. Mike, do you have concern that the Eagles offense might take a step back with the new handoff rules? NFL basically made the RPO illegal. You can't hand off to someone in front of you, meaning the quarterback won't be allowed to just do the traditional RPO where you pull the ball from the running back if that's the read.
I'm not aware of that. I mean, if there was a rule adjustment, that I've thought I pretty much knew about all the rule adjustments, even the minor ones. That would be sort of big. Now, something may have happened, but I'm not. I'll look into it. I'll look into it.
All
right.
I've
not heard that.
All right, Adam Caplan, football at 4, and training camp's here. Adam, get your boots on. Get ready for another season, man.
Number, what is this, 23 for me? Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, though, Mike.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you. Adam Caplan, football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.